Hey guys, what's going on? Back with another zombies video, and it looks like I found another one of Jason Blundell's quote-unquote impossible Easter eggs from Black Ops 3. And every time I find one, I think it's the most amazing Easter egg and the most amazing solve. And then I find another one, and then I think that's the most amazing Easter egg and the most amazing solve. So this being the latest one, and just to give you an idea, maybe when you're watching this, it's March 2021, and Black Ops 3 came out in what is it, November of 2015. And I didn't really get into Easter egg hunting maybe till like 2018, maybe 2017 when I really started diving into the backstory and stuff like that. So unfortunately, this goes back to, obviously, as you can probably tell by the title, it goes back to even further back to Black Ops 2, Mob of the Dead, the loading screen, and in an interview or a couple of interviews during probably around that time, Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, he went on a couple of big YouTube channels and it did interviews, and that was something that I personally wasn't happy about at the time. But actually, with this off, my kind of thoughts and viewpoint of Jason Blundell drastically changed. It improved a lot to show the kind of Easter eggs that they put in the game. It changes my thought. Again, I was kind of the old school Jimmy Zielinski way of thinking and philosophy of let people figure it out on their own, or the zombies community figure it out on their own. Don't give too many answers. People hated Jimmy Zielinski because of that. They would go on Twitter try and get answers out of him about Bus Route B, about new maps that are coming, and transit Easter eggs and stuff like that, backstory stuff. And he would pretty much shoot them down every time. So this kind of proves how, in a way, Jimmy Zielinski was right, but at the same time, it definitely improves how I think of Jason Blundell. Like I wasn't really happy again that he was going on channels, but uh, this does obviously prove how great Treyarch is as in hiding Easter eggs and stuff like that. And I just really quickly again before I move on, this I'm calling the kind of the short edited monetized version because a lot of stuff I can show you just by showing you clips. And but then again, that also goes against what I usually say of I would like the zombies community to get more into brainstorming, researching, stuff on their own. So I'm gonna give you kind of the layout. You can go Google the stuff yourself, look at the footage. But for monetary copyright reasons, I'm gonna not put them in this video. I'm just gonna be showing you screenshots, and it'll be upon yourself if you want to go do the research. Again, really quick backstory: during Black Ops 3, he went on a couple channels, and in one of the interviews, he said, "Everything you're figuring out or seeing now in Black Ops 3, DLC 2 and 3, I believe he said." It goes back to Black Ops 2 and Mob of the Dead. And he did mention, I couldn't find the interview anyways, but he did mention that the AFGX cipher on the Mob of the Dead loading screen wasn't the most important thing out there at the time, and he was 100% right. So let's just pretty much jump into it. So here is the Alcatraz Mob of the Dead loading screen, the infamous AFDGX cipher, if I said that right. And in the bottom left, a lot of people just said, oh, and that's the thing about the internet and big channels or people, how you don't let people influence you. I'm going to probably include myself. Like I said, I wasn't into Easter egg solving back then, but people just pretty much said, oh, it's, 9 lives, and you go into circles, and there's like 3 characters and stuff like that. And that's the unfortunate thing with YouTubers and big channels, that they just make anything without doing research, and oh, this makes sense, so that's the solve, without necessarily doing research. Granted, keep in mind this is an Easter egg solve that took a couple years to finally realize and see the big picture. And again, you have to understand how Treyarch. Once you learn how Treyarch hides stuff, or what type of Easter eggs they put in there, Again, really quickly, I'm not going to go through everything. Everything is pretty much taken from pop culture, and I'm going to leave it at that. You know, movies, books, poems, a lot of stuff from pop culture, TV, movies, magazines, comics, whatever you can think of. It's pretty much in there somewhere. So we're gonna use the cat has 9 lives, and this is a solve for this, obviously, for that, obviously. And here's a close-up of it. It says a cat has 9 lives. So what it basically was supposed to hint at during Black Ops 3 is the fact that the story for Shadows of Evil and the DLC season or DLCs were taken from Cats the musical, which it was first a book in the 60s or 30s, if I remember correctly. And then Andrew Lloyd Webber made it into a musical, and it's a pretty amazing musical. Very difficult to understand. Now, I watched it years ago, couldn't really understand it, but having played zombies relentlessly for a long time, I understand what Cats now is about. And that's one thing I always say I'm grateful for. Treyarch teaches us a lot, or people should be taught a lot or taken stuff from the maps and stuff that Treyarch puts in there. As you can see, the eyes match up. I did color in the eyes just to kind of have people understand it a little bit better. And Jessica Rose, you know, you won't know it at the time. At first, I thought maybe it's kind of a trick, but I thought it was supposed to symbolize like a demon or the devil. It does because it's all. It does kind of because it just shows how clever Treyarch is, because it's also the story of Phallus and Mephistopheles, and you're gonna see how that definitely ties into everything. It helps solidify that it's a solve. So if you kind of see the outline with the tail in the perfect position, it's supposed to symbolize or resemble a cat. They're kind of in the same pose as the cat's poster, and the eyes are up top, looking down, and stuff like that. Pretty obvious. I know there's still going to be a lot of doubters and haters because, again, I always say that doubters and haters just simp on big channels. They don't want to know any other solve except what the big channels tell them. And they don't realize that the big channels absolutely solve nothing. They just pretty much report on it. Again, so she's supposed to symbolize a cat. Nero's eyes supposed to be symbolizing the eyes of the from the cat's poster. So moving on, that was the first little solve, I guess, or breadcrumb, and then I started digging deep and researching it to find the bigger picture, so to speak. Kind of a pun. So I'm going to kind of break it down, and this, again, really quickly, is just going to be the outline of the storyline. Not every single character from Cats, not every single character from Primus and Ultimus, but pretty much just the overlying DLC story that Treyarch told us that we were supposed to pick up on, but did not, unfortunately. So on the right hand side, and I put it where it kind of belongs, Grisabella is an old cat, homeless cat. As you can see, she's shaggy and needs a haircut, hasn't been taken care of. I think in the story she's been on the street for a while, doesn't have a home, she's homeless. And aside from that, and I kind of jumped ahead a little bit, so let me backtrack. In the musical, the cats all live in a and this is from 1980s. They all live in a junkyard, which is supposed to symbolize purgatory, because the person that wrote the book, and you'll see it there, T.S. Eliot was the author of the book before it became a musical. It's a story about purgatory and how cats, their 9 lives, and I guess the cycle of their 9 lives, symbolizing how, you know, they say cats have 9 lives and they die and then they kind of go back to the beginning of their lives. So the old cat symbolizing Ultimus and vice versa, Ultimus symbolizing Grisabella, is the old cat coming pretty much to the end of their lives. And I'm going backwards. I wish I could have flip-flopped it showing forward, but it might be a little bit better that I'm showing it going backwards because it is a cycle of sorts. Again, the cats live in a junkyard symbolizing purgatory, and T.S. Eliot, the author of the book, was a big Dante's Inferno, Dante's Divine Comedy, which I spoke about years ago, so I'm hoping people eventually caught on to that. So it's a story of Dante, basically of purgatory, and the cats are in purgatory, and they have to do a couple of things, maybe show that they're worthy to go to heaven and stuff like that. Kind of the same, well, exactly the same story as in Black Ops 3. So Grisabella being the old cat, symbolized in this picture by Ultimus, they have to go speak to a god-like figure, and in the cats it's called Old Deutonomy. And he is the godlike cat that grants somebody their wish to be reborn. And of course, with Brutus and Mob of the Dead, being reborn is a huge theme, and I hope that people know that by now, being reborn in cycles and stuff like that. So in Black Ops 3, Monty symbolizes Old Deutonomy, who is a godlike figure who is going to ultimately grant Ultimus their wish to get reborn into a younger version of themselves and go back into Origins, as you can probably see. And on the left side, the Jellicle cats are basically the cat being reborn. They're young, they're vibrant, they're good looking, they're healthy. I think most of them are healthy. They're vibrant, they're healthy. Not to say all young people are like that, but I guess back then in the 80s or even in the 30s, whenever the book was written, that's, I guess, what they think of. Not to say every kid that, symbolizing by youth is not always healthy, especially nowadays, how times have changed. But that's a whole nother story for another day. So in theory, back then, he writes the book about when a cat pretty much gets at the end of their lives, and they have 9 lives, that they ultimately want to get reborn into a younger, or they will, if they're good, get reborn into a younger version of themselves, maybe a younger, better version of themselves. So that's pretty much the overlining story, is Ultimus at the end of Black Ops 3, pretty much, and it makes sense when you think about it, why you would have the younger version in Origins, and then in Black Ops 3 you show how they actually got to that younger version of themselves. So pretty much in Black Ops 3, at the end they get reborn, go back to Origins in Black Ops 2. Moving on, and this is just to kind of show you how it parallels, or the exact, how artistically Treyarch decided to do it. So in the end of Gorod Krovi, Richtofen, all the souls that he's gathered, sends them back up to heaven, to go to the house, and symbolizing Argartha, symbolizing heaven, and they get reborn. I should have had a photo, I honestly don't, I forgot. But as you know, in the house, they get reborn into little kids, and their younger version little kids. So now they're all pretty much dead, ascending to heaven, getting reborn into a new, younger version of themselves. And in this scene, you see that how the godlike cat is taking the old cat up to heaven so she can get reborn into a newer, younger version of herself. And again, let me just backtrack real quick. This is them going into heaven, and this is her ascending almost the same way, going into heaven. He lets her go, and she gets into heaven so she could get reborn into a younger version, younger, better version of herself. Not necessarily dying, but just kind of starting the cycle over again. And lastly, it looks exactly the same, where but like, again, this is more the monetized version. I'll probably make another version so you can see clips of everything, but ultimately it's supposed to be the cat on the bottom. They're not going to use everything exactly, and there are other movies and stuff that Treyarch used for Black Ops 3. That's why I guess I kind of found out if there was an impossible Easter egg. It's a multitude of things, not necessarily just one big impossible Easter egg, unsolvable, whatever. like Jason Blundell said, it's stuff that you have to visualize and interpret, not necessarily. You can go into the map, data mine it, and figure out the steps how to, have a Wonder Waff or something like that as an Easter egg. So lastly, I think that's the last thing I have. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much how it's showing them. Not necessarily ascending to heaven, but that's them in the beginning, going back to Origins. I always had my doubt about this, but I guess this confirms that they did go to Origins. I thought maybe for some crazy reason they went back to somewhere crazy like Transit, but it looks like it confirmed that they definitely went back to Origins. Lastly, just in case if you're not familiar, again, that pretty much ends the overall story of Primus and Ultimus. Now I'm going to go into some characters. Faust. So in Kino der Toten, there's two posters. Kino der Toten was in Black Ops 1. Black Ops 1 was supposed to lay the groundwork for Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3. Black Ops 2 was the Pygmalion poster. Black Ops 3 is the Faust poster. And the whole entire also story of Black Ops 3 is about Faust and Infinite Warfare and the Afterlife Theater, all that stuff that the zombies community probably doesn't know about. But anyways, so Faust is the main story of Black Ops 3, Pygmalion being the main story of Black Ops 2, and Kino der Toten, and that introduced all that in Black Ops 1. Moving on, we have Nero, who is a magician, kind of a phony magician. He's kind of like a trickster. But the main thing you have to take away from this is that he is a magician and not necessarily a best magician. He's kind of like a phony magician, I believe. And I know he kills his wife, and again, he's not a great musician. So in Cats, I used the newer version of it instead of the original 80s version, because in the 80s version, he doesn't look like a magician, but his name is Mephistopheles. Obviously, it's the same thing as Faust. Nero also is the story of Faust and Mephistopheles, but in this version, he looks more like a magician. I guess because on Broadway, you can't really have a hat. It might fall off when they're performing on stage. So, because they're always dancing and jumping around on stage. So this kind of shows how he's they call him like a magical cat, but he's basically a magician. And they all are in limbo / purgatory because they did bad things in their lives, and I think same thing, he was a bad phony magician. He was not a great magician, magical cat, whatever. So he kind of gets stuck also in purgatory. Same thing as Nero, and that's another thing that I'm like, wow, that's a definite solve, how they both have a phony magician, and the cat's name is Mephistopheles. And not Cats isn't necessarily 100% about Faust, but it does have some obviously Faust stuff in there. But I think that's the last photo that I have. So again, just want to kind of show this to everyone. I know it's a couple years late, but at the same time, I always tell people, hey, we're going forward. This is the way you need to look for Easter eggs and stuff like that. Again, this is going to be the monetized version. I'll probably come up with a new version with some clips that are going to get copyrighted and claimed, so I won't make any money on those. So I'll probably do that in a couple of days or weeks or something. Alright, I'll see you guys later.